The vast grasslands of South America, home to semi-wild horses, and the scene of a brutal procedure. In so-called blood farms, blood is drawn from pregnant mares because it contains PMSG, a hormone that ensures that cheap pork schnitzel end up on our plates.
You can control reproduction with the help of this hormone, PMSG. One sow goes into heat, the next sow then goes into heat. You can enforce synchronisation. You create effectiveness.
A torture for the mares. The latest depictions coming from South American farms are drawing criticism from experts.
The inference is that there is a lack of veterinary care and also the fundamental duty of care to our fellow creature, the horse.
Is our demand for cheap meat to blame for the suffering of thousands of mares? The images are hard to bear. Photographs taken by the German organization Animal Welfare Foundation of the so-called blood farms in South America. Mares that are tortured for the blood business. They have the coveted hormone PMSG, a hormone that is of great importance for the pig industry. In Argentina and Uruguay, the Argentinian company Syntex maintains the blood farms. The mares are continuously mated there and then left to bleed, quite legally. Animal rights activist Sabrina Gurtner has been documenting conditions on South American blood farms for the Animal Welfare Foundation since 2015.
The period of time that this PMSG hormone is in the blood is very limited. That's a 2 to 3 month period. And in that short period of time, as much blood as possible is taken from the mares, much more than international guidelines recommend for non-pregnant horses. And that poses great health risks to the mares and also to the unborn foals.
The operators are reluctant to show their records. The blood collection is screened off by privacy walls. But in 2018, animal rights activists obtained images from a hidden camera from the barn, which revealed the brutal procedures for taking blood.
This employee uses an iron hook to push the mare in there. And here you can see how scared she is, how she resists, how she panics. She experiences this every week, and every time she does, she's even more scared and resists going into that restraint box.
Syntex has since invested a lot of money in security measures to prevent such recordings. The torment of South American horses has a lot to do with our desire for pork. To understand this, one must first understand how meat is produced. To be lucrative, everything must be timed precisely, in the organic sector just as it is in the conventional sector. On the Hüssenberghof in the Teutoburg forest in Germany, as on all organic farms, however, the use of PMSG is prohibited. 168 organic sows live here with their piglets. The mother sows have suckled their little ones in this barn for 40 days. Now it's time for weaning. Organic farmer Harald Nutt and his son Leonard will separate the sows from their piglets today.
So that we don't always have to crawl through the small door, I stand in here and drive the sows out, and then Leonard can continue to pass around them outside. Then he locks the piglets in behind the door. By the time they realize, the sows are already whining. But this whining, and also the milk pressure on the udder, is also one of the factors that triggers the estrus, and therefore this is also an important thing for us.
Estrus, which means that the sows are ready to conceive again. From the farrowing pen, they go directly to the mating center. 5 days break, Then the next round begins for them here.
That works, I'd say, 95% of the time. Today is Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. On Wednesday, they're inseminated again.
The separation from their piglets is sweetened for the mother sows with particularly tasty feed. Now would be the time when conventional farms could use the PMSG. But here on the organic farm, it doesn't happen.
After we drop them off, it's breakfast time.
Harald Nutt is already the 5th generation of farmers. He runs the farm with his 2 sons. Around 11 kilograms is what the piglets should weigh when they are weaned.
It went well and they were fine, weight-wise too.
Like with many Germans, sausage is on the table for breakfast, from their own pigs.
From ours, exactly. Our pâté and our liver sausage. We've already eaten our pork sausage, but we have recently slaughtered. We are waiting for the result. And it's really nice to be able to share your own produce, your own sausages, with other people.
However, just like with the nuts, only 1% of pork is produced in Germany. We get a glimpse into the world of conventional meat production at Eurotier in Hanover, the world's largest trade fair for livestock farming. Everyday life in many German pigsties, as quickly becomes clear on our tour here, has nothing to do with the romanticism of farming, but rather with an industry. The price pressure is enormous, especially for pigs. Animals as a means of production with optimum added value. It's all about efficiency, rationalized processes and low costs. 51.8 million pigs were slaughtered in Germany in 2021. Even though consumption has been declining for years, pork remains the Germans' favorite meat. 31 kilograms of the per capita consumption comes from pigs, which is more than half of the total 55 kilograms. At the animal clinic of the University of Gießen, veterinarian Axel Behrendt deals with the reproduction of farm animals. In conventional meat production, it is often a matter of a few cents in order to survive in the price war. There is hardly any room for deviation from the norm.
It is often the case that the piglets are produced on one farm where there are the sows. At a certain age, the piglets are then given to the next farm, which specializes in fattening the animals. And the one that fattens the piglets wants uniform groups that grow consistently, because the next customer is the slaughterhouse. And they also want uniform groups, because slaughtering, cutting, everything is oriented according to certain standards. At the end of the day, you can say a bit like this: a piece of toast has to fit in the toaster. And you can achieve that by forming these groups, these homogeneous groups.
In addition, piglets are less susceptible to disease if they all come from the same barn. Conventional fattening farms like to buy as many piglets as possible at once. This is another reason why it's important for piglet producers to ensure that their mother sows are all fertilized and whelping at the same time. Synchronizing the cycle is helped by PMSG, a sex hormone that pregnant mares have in their blood. The substance is precious. 100 grams of the hormone can fetch 1.4 million euros. Back in Argentina. In March 2022, animal rights activists once again found severely injured mares on the premises of the Argentine blood farm Syntex. Obviously, the welfare of the animals still doesn't play a major role.
The lame horses are not separated and given veterinary treatment. Instead, they remain in the group. Here you can see 2 mares that are both badly injured. They both have open wounds on their legs, deep open wounds at the fetlock joint. You can still see the puncture marks of the cannula here on the neck. So she's had blood drawn relatively recently. And you can also see here when she walks that she can't put much weight on her right hind leg.
At the University of Gießen, veterinarian Stefanie Kremer holds the professorial chair in laboratory animal science and animal welfare. she sifts through the animal rights activists' material for us. The violations against animal welfare already start with the blood sampling.
That's not normal to see a visible wound afterwards.
So what do you conclude from the condition of the wounds that are pictured there?
The inference is that there is a lack of veterinary care and also the fundamental duty of care to our fellow creature, the horse.
Argentina's neighbor Uruguay also has blood farms. There, animal rights activist Sabrina Gurtner filmed particularly emaciated mares in 2021. The animal rights activist even finds dead horses in the pasture. The poor condition of the mares seems to be intentional.
That's the perverse thing. Basically, it's about working as efficiently as possible. And we have reports that the more emaciated the mares are, that is, the worse their condition, including their nutritional status, the higher the PMSG level. One could conclude from this that it is intentional, that the mares are in a particularly poor condition, also in a state of malnutrition, in order to achieve the highest possible PMSG yield.
There are no official figures on how often the PMSG serum is used in Germany. Experts estimate that it's used in 10 to 30% of farms. In Germany, 3 companies offer drugs containing PMSG for piglet production: Serumwerk Bernburg, Ceva and Intervet. The hormone PMSG is obtained from the blood of pregnant mares on blood farms such as those in South America. Through the sale, the PMSG reaches the German pharmaceutical companies, which use it to produce or market the sought-after drugs for the pig industry. An important veterinary congress is taking place in Hanover. Serumwerk Bernburg is represented there with a booth. We are not allowed to film there, and nobody wants to talk to us either. The company sells a drug which contains PMSG from Syntex, from the farm in Argentina where the animal rights activists had filmed the many lame mares in March 2022. We would like to talk about whether those responsible in Germany are aware of the abuse on the farm, but we only get a written answer. At the farm where the PMSG was obtained for our product, we were unable to confirm the allegations made to you by the Animal Welfare Foundation. Nobody likes to talk about the use of PMSG, neither the companies nor farmers or vets. Again and again we are faced with closed doors. Back at the organic farm of the Nutt family, we experience why it's so important that pregnancy, farrowing and suckling happen as synchronously as possible, even without PMSG. On the Nutt's farm, the 168 mother sows are kept in 7 groups. These sows will move next to the farrowing pen. Their gestation period will soon be over. The group opposite was inseminated 3 weeks ago. Harald Nutt can tell from the sow's behavior whether the insemination has worked.
This sow, the 420, she's producing mucus and very restless. She hasn't been eating. She's in heat. That's what we call it.
A sow in heat must be inseminated as quickly as possible. Sow 420 is now a problem. She no longer fits into her group, which has been pregnant for 3 weeks, nor does she fit in with the group that has just been weaned today, which will not be inseminated for another 5 days.
I'm going to serve her with the boar today. I always order the semen from an insemination station. I haven't done that yet today, and I wouldn't do that for a single animal either. That's why we have the boar, and I've had her served now.
Anything that deviates from the norm will cost extra. For example, this litter. In pigs, the gestation period usually lasts 114 days. But this sow farrowed out of sequence a week before her group mates. This disrupts the workflow.
We want to castrate within the first 7 days. That means that I have to castrate these piglets sooner than the group. So I have to set up the equipment again, prepare everything again. The vaccinations don't fit with the schedule. The piglets are vaccinated with us twice. They don't fit into the scheme now either. So these are things that require more effort, and then also financially. If I have to open a pack of 20 vaccination shots for the 13 piglets here, then I have to throw away 7 vaccination shots if necessary.
In the organic sector, higher costs can partly be compensated for by the higher price. Nut gets about 160 euros for a piglet, while his conventional colleagues often get barely a third of that, depending on the market situation. Reproduction expert Axel Wehren from the University Veterinary Clinic in Gießen has investigated whether the use of PMSG in conventional agriculture is really unavoidable if one wants to produce economically.
We looked for farms, commercial farms, that is, not hobby farms, not open-air museums or any university farms, but those that are on the market that do without PMSG. We collected their experiences in order to see, does it work at all under practical conditions? And we found out that farms that produce piglets commercially manage just as well without PMSG as with it.
On this farm, they have had experience with PMSG and have dispensed with it again. Nadine and Heinrich Henke in the Diepholz district of Lower Saxony run a conventional farm. In their barns, 1,250 mother sows raise 40,000 piglets a year. A birth is currently in progress in the farrowing house. Nadine Henke is a qualified vet and looks after the offspring.
2, 4, 6, 17.
Nadine Henke used to work in one of the largest veterinary practices for pigs in northern Germany. Many of her colleagues prescribe PMSG. She herself never had a good gut feeling about it.
I also tried to avoid PMSG when I was in practice because I was well aware of the way mares are kept in South America. And yes, I just see that it can be done without.
The PMSG drug is expensive, around 9 euros per dose. For a large company like this one, it would cost over 20,000 euros per year. The Henkes stopped using PMSG 7 years ago. They have never done this on a large scale.
I didn't see any advantage in the whole story. It was an advisory recommendation from the vet. We just tried it out, and then we said, OK, well, it doesn't do us any good now. We'd better let the sows run their natural course.
With the help of the 4 boars in the barn, once a day, the farmer drives them past the sows ready to receive.
The boar works like a pin-up model here. The sows are supposed to see him, smell him, and think, oh, hello. The piglets are gone. I'm going after my natural urge. I want to bring offspring into the world again now. There's no substitute for a natural boar to trigger the frenzy.
Once the boar is through and the sow stimulated, things have to move quickly. The sooner Heinrich Henke inseminates the sows in heat now, the greater the chance that fertilization will work. Meanwhile, in the neighboring barn, the birth is faltering. Nadine Henke has to help the sow and her offspring a bit.
Someone sits here butt first. That sometimes doesn't work either. Oh, hello.
In Germany, veterinary medications on prescription can only be obtained directly from the veterinarians in charge. For the vet, that's part of the problem with the PMSG issue.
One point is the veterinarians, who of course also generate revenue through the sale of the PMSG. It's money generating, revenue generating. And that's also something where, as a veterinarian, you don't like to do without it.
The production of PMSG is not only a lucrative business in faraway South America, but was also in Germany, in the middle of the Thuringian forest. This is where Moira, Europe's largest Haflinger stud, is located. Until 2021, blood was regularly drawn from pregnant mares in Moira. The horses there, unlike in South America, are used to dealing with people. In December 2019, a TV crew visited the stud farm and talked to the manager. She showed equipment and photos of the blood collection. What kind of permit do you have here to draw blood from the horses?
None.
Why?
Because no permit is required.
In fact, I can well imagine that people in Moira assumed they had acted correctly because there was no intervention from the authorities either.
After the broadcast at that time, the responsible state office for consumer protection became active after all. It examined the circumstances and then gave its approval. Our expert has no understanding of why the authorities didn't prohibit the blood draw at that time.
From my point of view, this is contrary to animal welfare because the horses suffer stresses that go beyond a tolerable level. The horse is used as a producer to generate these hormones. And the blood is practically the carrier material in which these hormones are found, insofar one takes the blood in considerable quantities. But you don't really know what actual damage you're doing to these horses.
There are no scientific studies on how often and how much blood can be drawn from pregnant mares without harming them and their unborn foals. But there are general guidelines for blood donations from non-pregnant horses. In it, a 30-day break between two collections is recommended. In Moira, blood was drawn quite openly several times a week.
I don't think it's a question of how these foals will cope afterwards. Perhaps it's also not the question of how the mares will fare afterwards, because they are basically means of production. The goal is not to produce the foal. The goal is to produce the PMSG, and the useful life of the mares, if you can put it that way, is also relatively limited. The mares are used for 2 or 3 years, then they are of no use anymore.
In the GDR, the marketing of PMSG was an important source of money for East German studs.
Breeding became profitable only when serum was produced from the blood of pregnant mares for veterinary medicine.
The PMSG from Moira was processed at IDT Biologica in Dessau, when the French pharmaceutical group Seva bought the company in 2019, the cooperation came to an end. In 2021, the business with German mare blood ended. Since then, no more PMSG has been obtained in Moira. Seva also did not want to give us an interview. In writing, they informed us, the PMSG we use for pharmaceuticals is sourced from Iceland. Because PMSG from South America now has a bad reputation, more and more pharmaceutical companies are turning to Iceland for the hormone. In addition to Seva, also Intervet gets its PMSG from Iceland. But are the mares doing better there? Animal welfare activist Sabrina Gortner and the Animal Welfare Foundation team have also documented PMSG collection in Iceland in 2019 and again in 2021. The mares in Iceland are semi-wild horses and blood collection is completely legal. But even the capture process means massive stress for them.
In Iceland, for example, we've seen a mare in the blood collection box struggle and try to break free, and one leg got caught in the sidewall and was stuck there for minutes. And yes, so of course serious injuries can happen to the legs, but also to the mare's head if she rears up and hits her head on those bars.
Animal welfare expert Stefanie Krämer has also sifted through this material for us.
You can clearly see here what poor condition these wooden pens are in. Here alone, there are countless possibilities for the animals to injure themselves. This tying up triggers defense reactions which can be dangerous, as shown by the horses here. The Icelandic horses can strongly hurt themselves. There are about 300 kilos of body weight attached to it. And when the horse practically moves and rotates around this sensitive axis of the neck area, it can sustain the most serious injuries.
The pharmaceutical company Seva knows about these images from Iceland in 2021 and told us that since then the welfare of the animals has been strictly checked by all parties on a regular basis. Intervet also said they are now steadily reviewing the situation and will take corrective action if necessary. We want to know why the use of hormones from mare cruelty is allowed in Germany at all. Why are there not even binding animal welfare standards in the production of medicines? We would have liked to discuss this with the Federal Minister of Agriculture, Cem Özdemir, but he has no time for us. In writing, the ministry told us that he wants to lobby for the introduction of animal welfare rules for medicines in the EU. The Argentine company Syntex also responded to us in writing, but didn't comment on the allegations of torture. For them, the animal welfare organization, Animal Welfare Foundation, is not legitimate. They didn't provide any facts. Now, however, they have announced that no more PMSG is to be supplied to Germany until further notice. They didn't give any reason for this. On organic farms, however, piglet production works without PMSG. At the Hüssenberghof in the Teutoburg forest, this is a matter of course. These piglets are now old enough to manage without mother's milk. After weaning from the sow, the piglets remain on the farm for another 6 weeks, and only then do they go to the organic fattener. When rounding up, one piglet stands out, which is clearly smaller than its siblings.
Exactly. This is a very small piglet, which was already a very small piglet at birth and has not made up for it, and then did not get as much milk from the mother as its siblings. And now we're going to put it back with a sow that doesn't have so many piglets.
Sows that farrow out of turn, piglets that have to suckle longer. Everything that disrupts the cycle makes meat more expensive in the end. But does our desire for cheap meat justify the torture of pregnant mares?
I don't think that all pig farmers know what kind of conditions it's produced under. If they knew, they might think about it differently.
The consumer also has no chance of recognizing this. There is no label indicating whether PMSG preparations were used. If you want to buy pork that has been produced safely without horse suffering, you have to buy organic pork or do without it altogether.